What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Jacob and Steven of Elder Devil. It is great to be able to talk to you guys. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having
Yeah, thank
us.
you for having us.
Yeah, anytime, anytime. It's so awesome to have you here. Your new album, Everything Worth Loving, is absolutely kick-ass, and I think it's a very thought-provoking album title in terms of the aggressive nature and the real atmospheric darkness that's demonstrated on here. Was there sort of like a preconceived vision of what you wanted this album to sound like? Was it meant to just be a continuation of the light dimmed eternal, or was it meant to be kind of like new uncharted territory for both of you?
I'll speak to the lyrics portion of it. I'll let Jacob talk about musically, but no, I didn't. I didn't go. I didn't set out for this album to be a continuation of Like Dim. I actually kind of wanted it to be something quite different. What that was going to be, I don't. I didn't really know until I started writing the lyrics. But I didn't want to just make another Light Dimmed point two or whatever. I kind of wanted to, as the lyrics started developing, I realized I was going more in a personal direction, which Like Dim is not a very personal album for me, in terms of lyrics. So I kind of went the more personal direction, and I was happy with how it was progressing. It felt natural and it felt like it wasn't contrived, and so I just followed that thread throughout. So lyrically, no, I didn't want it to be like Dim too, and I'm happy with how it turned out. I'm happy that it became more personal album.
Yeah. As for you, Jacob.
There's like a couple songs that would act as a bridge between Light Dimmed and Everything Worth Loving, where I think they were probably the first songs I wrote, right? So they kind of have some carryover riffs that feel similar, and then as I kept writing, things kind of started taking shape as their own. I think actually the title track at the end of the album, it was the first song I wrote, to where that one to me feels like it could have been a Light Dim track, and then actually probably the middle of the album and the first half is more new stuff where it feels kind of different to me, and it just kind of just it took its own trajectory, and I was just kind of following along where it sounds cheesy, but like where the riffs went from there, kind of they took their own shape.
Is do you feel like I had the privilege of hearing the album early, but do you feel like songs such as "Burning Forest," "Endless Need," "My Body Is an Earthen Shrine," do you think that that's like a good representation of what this whole album is going to sound like, or is that just the tip of the iceberg?
I think there's those are good. Like we really like those as singles. First of all, I think we picked those, and then everyone else like involved with the project agreed that those were great singles to start with. But that definitely is a tip of the iceberg. Like there's a lot more sludgy stuff that happens in the album, since we kind of focus on the grind aspect for the first few singles, and I think that definitely there's more to show that slows down and gets a little heavier in the rest of the album.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. I think those are some of my. I mean, they're not just singles because the label was like, "Hey, these should be singles." I think we the label and I, or us and the label, we all agreed that these were pretty solid tracks that represented the album well, and some of our favorite tracks as actual people like wrote them and performed them. Like I love all of these tracks. There's not many, in my opinion. There's not many. There's no like, oh, we picked that because it kind of sounds good, but we're not really crazy about it. But maybe people will like it. But no, we like all the tracks. I think if you like those tracks, you'll like the album. You should like the album.
You mentioned, Steven, that this is more of like a personal album for you as opposed to the previous one. So therefore, did was it a different energy that you were channeling into this lyrically, and does it almost resonate with you in a different way than your previous album, or is it meant to kind of in a way feel? Is it still feeling very much the same because it's still coming from your own mind?
I think it's just a different headspace writing this album in 2000. God, what was it? 2000, Jacob, 2021,
The 2000, 2001, like kind of in
yeah,
between.
21, yeah. Versus 2019, late 2018 with Light Dimmed. Just a different headspace, and it still feels like Elder Devil to me. But I was really I kind of had in my own mind thinking, okay, I really don't want to just make the same lyrically the same album again. We can all be pissed off at things constantly and just be, songs that are pissed off at religion or pissed off at whatever. And I just really didn't want to do the exact same thing again. And so when I started writing these lyrics, like I said, I wasn't setting out to say, oh, this is what I'm going to write about. It just kind of came about naturally. And also in the back of my head, thinking, you really just you don't need to write the same album, dude, telling myself that. And so I ended up being really happy with how it turned out because I think the lyrics, they hold up and it's representative of the time of what I was going through at that time. And that's kind of what I want my lyrics to be is whatever headspace I'm in and however I'm feeling, that's how I want the lyrics to manifest themselves. So
Jacob, did that at all have any inspiration or influence on how you laid down the music and the recording for it? Did maybe like the concept or the sort of subject matter help guide your hand with regards to what we're hearing musically on here, instrumentally?
I think just actually, typically the music does happen first. And I kind of had, I had been seeing Steven was writing in the past couple of releases, like the EP came out that summer prior. And so that was a little bit in my headspace, but I typically, like, I'm not a lyricist at all in my own projects, so I'm usually just focusing on riffs, and anything else would be a little subconscious if I was influenced by that.
Yeah. Well, you also play in like multiple projects, as I said before we started rolling. Your Metal Archives page has quite the impressive resume, and I was just wondering, depending on the project that you're involved with, is the creative process maybe different than what we would hear on an bands such as Hellish Form or Keeper or Skull Incision, etc.?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it is nice to have a variety of projects and genres to work with because I can kind of, I say that if I'm jamming something and it sounds like one thing, I can filter it towards that project and sort them accordingly. But it actually just kind of, it's like I don't know. When I'm focusing on one project, I'm resting on the other one, so the energy is building up. So now, like, when this release cycle is kind of on a downturn, like we had played some shows with Elder Devil, then I'll have like a ton of writing mojo for another project, and then when that releases, I'll come back to Elder Devil to feel revitalized and to write some fast songs. It kind of just all works out very naturally, so it's nice to have different outlets for different vibes and different tones that I like to work with.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to this music, this could more of a question for Steven, but do you feel like Elder Devil's music is open to interpretation, or do you want a listener to be just as engaged as in the context of the music as the music itself?
I mean, I think anybody's going to bring their own interpretation to things, and I would say as the person who wrote the lyrics, like there's a right interpretation, like what I'm thinking the song is about. But if people have different interpretations, it's not. I mean, that's their takeaway from it, right? I think with certain things, there's a very clear like linearity to it. So if you read the lyrics like After Flesh, which is an older song that we repurposed for this because we still play it live consistently and we love it. And then My Body's Earth and Shrine, which is kind of like a sister song to that, kind of spiritual sequel to that. I mean, there's a very clear like linearity to the lyrics and what those songs are about. But people read things into it that perhaps I wasn't thinking originally, I don't have a problem with that. But yeah, I mean, there are songs that's like that's what that's about. And if you read something into it, cool, but that's still what it's about. But I don't know. I don't get defensive about it, and I'm not gonna, overthink it if people listen and hear different things in it. That's their interpretation. It's part of putting music out there. People are going to interpret it in different ways.
Yeah.
Metal is very good at being either like deep and metaphorical or just blunt, straight up about some cheesy little story.
Yeah. Which I think is always the greatest thing about metal, because I feel like metal is probably the most diverse in terms of its lyrical content, both personal and external, both very literal, very metaphorical, some very realistic, and some very fantasy driven as well. And does Elder Devil pretty much like approach like everything from multiple angles in a way? Like, can can you kind of dabble in multiple subject matters, especially because the light dimmed eternal seems to be very different contextually versus everything worth loving.
Yeah, I think that's what's so fun about this band is that it's not a, I think if you're really wedded to it, kind of like theme as a band, it's like that's the band you are and that's the song that you write, then that kind of becomes suffocating. And maybe we originally started out, that's kind of the idea I had for the band, but it quickly went away after the first two releases from that. And so, like if you listen to like Tormentor, like our EP we released, this last winter, I mean, it's pretty much all inspired by like Italian giallo movies, and that's kind of like the headspace I was in. It was fun creating that world, like I was creating my own kind of like giallo plot and films, and so it's really fun having the kind of space to explore those ideas. And Jacob doesn't ever say like, that's not the kind of band we are. We kind of keep it open. This is we as like band members keep it open for Jacob to write whatever he wants and kind of go the direction that he wants musically.
Hmm. And that led me perfectly into the next question I have for Jacob, because Jacob, when it comes to your riffing style and just your instrumental process in general, does the inspiration really strike out of the blue for you? Do you just hear the random melodies or the random ideas in your mind, or does it start? I hate this term, but I say it for lack of better words. Does it ever start off with like noodling in a way? Does it ever start off with just sort of like playing and then the riffs kind of form together in a way by accident?
Uh, Definitely kind of both. Everything Worth Loving was totally written just like right in the middle of lockdown, and so I was had this all this pent up like everything right, like everyone else did at the time, where we were stuck inside. So that was all pretty much all just noodling for a couple weeks straight, and stuff would come out because I very often will just kind of start and I'll like what would I as a listener expect to hear next out of this riff, and then that's kind of just how the songs get pieced together. But then in future stuff that we've been working on and will be coming out you know down the road, that's all been stuff where I would be I'd get a stroke of inspiration from just out in the day where like, ooh, a song would sound sick with this in the middle or starting out like this, and I'd just like keep that in my head until I can pick up a guitar again, and I craft it around that. So it's kind of been, I think, in how that worked out, Everything Worth Loving kind of has like a nice flow because it was all written in like such a close like proximity to each other. And then upcoming projects Untitled will be a lot more dynamic because it was totally approached in a different way. I was working again, so I couldn't write as often as I would have liked. So it's a totally different environment. This is definitely Everything We're Loving is totally a lockdown album.
I've never asked this question before, so this is the first. But I would say, like a lot of people, when I ask how a song starts off, 9 times out of 10, it starts off with a riff, and it's cool. Like I think it's amazing. But do you think we're eventually going to run out of riffs to start off with, in a way?
I That's like a deep philosophical, like existential dread question that I think about all the time because I'm like, even just in grind and grind adjacent metal music, it's like, dude, how oversaturated is the market? How do we keep doing this same thing all the time? But everything I listen to is like, this is sick. And like, this new grind band is sick. This new black metal band is sick and original and cool. How are we keeping writing new songs all the time
Yeah.
when we're all just like one or two dudes on guitar or people on the guitar, drums, bass, vocals, and we keep recycling the same thing, but it all sounds cool. I don't know the question of that. I feel like it's weird.
Yeah.
It's very weird. No, you're right, and it keeps me awake at night, honestly.
And I'm sure the answer you just gave was excellent. It sounded good, but I was totally distracted by Steven's dog. I love it when the pets photobomb the interviews. So
Yeah, he's a fussy. He's a lockdown dog, so he's very attached to me. This is Bagel.
that's awesome.
Um,
Perfect.
Yeah, it's my
But I think
favorite.
I would say what's funny about that question is that Jacob and I kind of have this ongoing joke where it's he'll write something and I'll be like, oh yeah, this sounds just like insert song
So
that
and
we've
so.
written. So we'll have to like maybe twist it a little bit, right? Because it's like he doesn't realize because Jacob writes so much music that's like, oh yeah, this is just like that. So we'll change it a little bit. And then we'll also hear bands that we love that have like very similar riffs in certain songs, and we'll kind of pick it out and be like, oh yeah, that's just like that song. And it's not a bad thing. It's because it's always like a little bit different, a little bit of a twist. But yeah, it's kind of like an ongoing joke.
Yeah,
A joke
I'm
with us, but
like the whole riffing thing is starting to become like metal's pop format in a way where the
yeah,
pop
yeah,
format
yeah.
has the four chord songs. So part of me wonders if metal is just gonna have like a similar principle with the riff style in a way.
The riff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure it is. It's gonna be like it's the guitar intro, drums blast in, then there's like a I don't know what a circle pit beat, and after that, then blast again, then a slow riff, and then blast and the song ends.
Yeah, and I
That's
never.
almost like
Uh,
it's the verse chorus verse of metal, right?
And I also wonder how people could be so selective with it. I love death metal, meaning I will enjoy going to see a Cannibal Corpse, and I will going to enjoy seeing a modern day band like Sang with Sugabog. But like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand how people could be so selective over it. It's like, yeah, well, I like Cannibal Corpse's Tomb of the Mutilated, but I can't get into Morbid Angel's Altars of Madness. It just, there's something different about it. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Splitting
Yeah,
hairs.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It's
I
all
think the
vibes, though.
more I know, I just think the more Jacob and I have talked about this as well, like individually. Okay, Bagel, where people get really defensive about genre, and they get really defensive about certain bands over other bands or certain releases over other releases, and like that's totally cool, but like keep an open mind still, right? Try to keep an open mind and maybe don't draw those like lines of demarcation to say like, well, I like this band and so therefore I can't like this band because they have this sound or something. And
yeah.
I don't know, it's always been a little bit odd to me.
I'm always
Yeah, it's complicated.
I'm always interested to see what subgenres they come up with next. Like Elder Devil reminds me a lot when I discovered you guys. Like it reminds me of a lot of another modern day band I really like, Devil Master, in a way, and they've been calling them sleaze thrash. So like,
What?
so
Huh? That's great.
yeah, but I don't even know what that means. But hey, you know what? They're getting
No, and Jacob and I argue about genres so much, like argue very politely about genre because like grindcore is has very specific connotations and people associate certain bands with grindcore and certain songs I listen to like this isn't grind, like we're not grind. But then other songs are like, oh yeah, that's our grind song. And so we go back and forth about this, like what, like how much hardcore. I think we're bringing more hardcore in a lot of instances to kind of to the table versus the grind stuff. Then you have other songs that are just like purely grind songs. So we always kind of struggle with this genre thing, deciding what exactly we are and what maybe some releases are more grind than others, and others are more kind of like hardcore or metal influenced. And I don't know. We still haven't landed on a good answer. We still don't
and
know.
you led me perfectly into the final question. I think both of you collaborate on because what I think is amazing about Elder Devil's music is it's very raw and it's very like I would say it's both raw sonically and it's raw with emotion at the same time. I feel like it's what you see is what you get with the album in a way. So when it comes to like the production side of things and really just the songwriting process, being that it captures so much of a moment, it's not like you guys are really overthinking it too much, right? It's like do you try to make it so like you capture a moment and try not to obviously you want to make sure that you put out a good product and everything like that, but it's not like you need to focus so much on like, oh, this needs to be tweaked here, you know what I mean?
Mm.
Yeah, when I kind of do love capturing the moment when I record a band, like in any of my clients and stuff, and I'll hear a little thing that catches my ear where it's like, oh, that was a cool little artifact in the recording where like, did you guys mean to do that? Like, do you want to redo this or do you want to keep it? Because I'm down to keep it because it's cool. It was a moment where a stick hit this in a certain way or a string scraped, like and I in a way I'm kind of half a perfectionist with my stuff, but at the same time I do really like letting stuff go and just kind of having the vibe come across, especially working with, as opposed to working in a studio band like a lot of my stuff, to working with a full band as we are. Um, I do kind of just like having that moment come across and kind of just being like, all right, this is like, some of these songs are bleak, desperate, intense, fast metal, where some of our physical and emotional limitations might come through in the recording, and I want to keep that and like kind of let it showcase itself a little bit within reason, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely, yes, to that.
Yeah, I think vocally as well, like when I'm recording vocals, and it's different obviously with every album or every EP, but there are deliberate parts where I have like breaths that are audible in the recording, and it's just I left them in because I think it's appropriate for the song, appropriate for the moment, and that kind of goes straight back to like mid 2000s, like listening to the Chariot a lot, where that was like one of the first bands I had heard that was really just raw in the recording, because I didn't grow up listening to a lot of, a lot of like early death metal or anything like that. So hearing like the Chariot's first album and just how much feedback there was and how dirty it sounded and just imperfect, but in like a really good way. So in certain moments, it's like, yeah, like I'm going to leave that breath in, not saying like, oh, I'm trying to be like this, but rather just because I feel like it fits the moment and it works. And I don't know if there's one thing I can say about previous releases, or at least about like, for example, Light Dimmed, the last full length, is that's a very clean album, in my opinion. Jacob probably has different thoughts about certain parts of it, but it feels very clean. And I think since then we've really tried to highlight and bring out some of that more rawness, whether that's more feedback. We have noise sections now from our drummer Pete, who does the noise stuff, and just try to make it a little rougher around the edges, and get a little more character in there.
And I think your dog is demonstrating on how the vocal patterns go as well.
Yeah. He's so bored with what I'm saying. He's like, God, dude, shut up.
Yeah.
Just yeah.
I I never get tired when the pets photobomb the interviews. I interviewed Butcher Babies one time, and her dog just secretly walked through behind the couch back and forth the whole time. The best is I was interviewing a
I didn't
band.
feel like this would happen.
Yeah, I'm glad it did. When a security guard at a concert venue
Yeah.
bombs the interview, I don't. I That's unacceptable. When the pets photobomb it, I
Ooh,
welcome it.
That's different. No.
Yeah,
No, Bagel's my security guard. He's the security guard.
yeah. The best is when a cat was like literally licking itself, if you know what I mean, in the background during the
Yeah,
entire
yeah, yeah.
during the interview the entire time, and he was talking very
Nice.
professionally because the band takes itself very seriously, and you just see that cat, and I'm just watching. I'm literally
Who is
watching
this
him.
cat?
It took every bit of upper body strength I had to not die laughing. So, um, but before
Yeah, I had a feeling this would happen today, so I just embraced it. I was like, he's gonna walk it on
Yeah,
my lap. Yeah,
I
no
welcome it.
worries.
I welcome it. I'm gonna message the publicist, being like, if
Yeah.
please note if any member has pets, they're required to be in the interview.
bring them in, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So before we go, I want to thank you both so much for your time today and for such an awesome
Yeah.
conversation. Most of all, thank you for this amazing new album, Everything Worth Loving. Is there just
Mhm.
anything else with Elder Devil that you would like to promote in terms of live performances, or what else we could be expecting? I know that the album's coming out in June, but what else would you like to plug for Elder
Yeah.
Devil?
Yeah, we've got a album release, which is coinciding with like a metal fest in Fresno at Strummers, and that's on the 16th. And then the following week we've got a kind of warehouse show that we're really excited about. But we'll be touring in July. We're getting the final date solidified and booked, and so we'll be heading out in July for about 5 days. And so that'll be going through the Pacific Northwest and back down. So we're excited to get out there, and yeah, very very excited to play for some new audiences.
Oh, yeah.
Jacob, did I leave anything out?
No, that's it. Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much, everybody. We are here with Elder Devil, Everything Worth Loving. Be sure to pick that up, coming out June of 2023. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.